Hello, it's June 12th, 2024. Thank you for joining me on another video. Today I was out on a walk, and in those times God often speaks very strong conviction and teaching and instruction according to what I need for the day. So I'm out on the walk in the woods, and in the last video I shared what Shannon and I were going through and something very specific that God was calling us to, an action, a direction that God had given us that was going to change the time and the season that we are in. And it was to trust Him for more, to trust Him for more in our life and ministry, and that it was time to move out of a cave or a prison that God had us in, a time of waiting where, like David and Joseph and so many others that follow God, there are times when He will put us in places just like those people in times past that walked with God, that listened to Him, that followed His directions. He will put us in places just like them, where we have to sit or stay or remain, whatever you want to call it. Those will be times where we will be in prison, so to speak, or, like I said, in a cave where it looks like we are just doing nothing. We are sitting, we are waiting for months, years. We are in one place, and God has us on a journey, and that one place is not our final stopping point, but we must go to those places for many reasons. For us to be trained, for God to test us and to perfect our faith, that we will not give up when we are put in places where it looks like we are supposed to be over here, but God has placed us in the exact opposite place, and it makes no sense to us. And I'm telling you, Christian, if you choose to see God and Christ as He is, and He comes to you and He helps you to understand that His call of discipleship is to walk with Him just as those in the Old Testament and New Testament walked with Him, going where He says to go, doing what He says to do, versus being in a religious program or system where we simply get an outline of what we think God wants from us, what His rules are and what His practices are, and that's essentially all we have to do, and the rest is up to us to wisely manage. It's not that way. In the last video, I shared that God was calling us out of a cave or a prison time that we have been in for so many years. Me personally, and Shannon and I together, we have been in a cave place, a place of long waiting with limited resources, that God said, it's time for you to get up, stand up, walk out of the cave. So we, a number of months ago, did that in our spirit, in our mentality. We said we will stand up and we will get up and we will walk out. And of course I'm talking real circumstances, but the faith is what we needed. So as I'm thinking about this, out on a walk, God puts firmly on my mind Red Sea moments. And of course we know what happened at the Red Sea. God called Israel out of their waiting place, the place that they had been in bondage and tied up and limited under the bondage of Egypt, and they were to be called out, and they had to go by faith out into the wilderness, and they had to trust God and that's what God is having us do in this season. And this is not just a one-time thing. God will do this in a disciple's life. He has done this in my life and Shannon's life. That we have been called at different times to get up and move into something new. And those times are hard because we get accustomed to where we've been. And we so desperately want to move, but still in our flesh, we also are afraid. And we don't know anything different than the place that God has had for us. So, as I said, we are moving into that. We are now actively taking steps where we say we will walk into things, walk out of the limited program and box that God has had us in, and we will make decisions on a daily basis saying that God will provide more for us. He will give us more direction. And in our way of thinking, and my way of thinking, there is some misunderstanding. Like the disciples, they continually misunderstood Jesus and the things that he said, and they even stepped out ahead of him at times and said things, and Jesus said, whoa, you're not thinking correctly. I walked out of the cave a couple months ago and immediately expected God to just start to bring everything. I didn't realize that when we walked out of the cave that God was going to lead us out to a Red Sea moment where it looks like, oh, we've come out of the cave. Okay, here we are. Let's go. We're moving to the promised land, whatever God has for us now, and new time. And we have come to Red Sea moments where it looks like, oh, we've walked out and God does not look like he's doing what we thought he would do in the time that we thought he would do it. So God is testing us. He is training us. He is leading us, yes. And we have to get to that Red Sea moment, or multiple Red Sea moments, where God will say, are you going to trust me? Does it looks like you're not? We're not moving out like I said you were moving out. It looks like you are still in that cave. Are you going to trust me? Are you going to keep making those steps every day? The closer we get and to the Red Sea moment where it looks like, oh, we're in trouble again. We don't have the resources we need. We're going to die out here in the wilderness. And we're either going to die here in the wilderness, or we're just going to have to give up and go back to the cave. So God is testing us. And sometimes we just get to the point where we're like, I don't know that we can bear the testing anymore. But God has to do it. It's what perfects our faith. It is what builds our faith. So we will no longer stumble and question and doubt. It's so vital for the work and the walk that we will all have to do with him, because he has specific places for us to go. He will lead us to his will, and it is specific for you, and it is specific for me. And in order to go into new seasons and times of God's will for us, he has got to bring us to those Red Sea moments. And he has got to change our flesh, our way of thinking. It has to be changed. We cannot go into the places that he has for us with our old mentalities, our old fears, our old doubts, our old understandings of how the world works, because God does not work according to the world. And I can tell you personally, he will really change your viewpoint. He will really change the way you operate. You no longer will make decisions based on, well, in order to do this, I must do it this way. God will say, no, we are not going to do it that way. We're going to do it a way that doesn't make sense. according to the world. Now, in Christian religion and sermons in our Bible studies, we talk about that. We say it with our mouth and we think it, but it never becomes reality until God makes it reality. And it will be hard. Right now, it is hard. We, Shannon and I, have to continue to walk up to the Red Sea. That moment where it looks like the Red Sea will not part and we can go no further and we will just die here. Our circumstances will be the death. What we believed for will not happen. And that's it. God has left us. So, a couple months ago, we walked out. And in my fleshly thinking, I did not realize that God was going to bring us to another Red Sea moment. But He has, and that is where I have to lift up, pick up my mat every day and trust God and keep moving forward. When God says to live boldly, live more, I've got to do it. And that's where Shannon and I find ourselves right now. We are living more, and we have to do it with what little money we have left. And let me tell you, that's hard. But it will reap fruit later on for ministry and personal. So when God helps us to understand that He controls everything, He brings every resource, we will no longer fear. So the testing and training process means that we have to step out and literally spend every penny that God has given us today, trusting that the Red Sea will be parted in His timing when we need it to be parted. Much more could be said about that, and more things will be shared in other videos as God leads. But I just wanted to bring that to you and help you to understand that God will use Red Sea moments in our lives when we truly walk with Him. He's testing and perfecting our faith in real ways. Trust Him, seek Him, ask Him what His will is for you. That is the path of discipleship. It's a wonderful path, and God is a wonderful Father, and Christ is our incredibly amazing Lord and Shepherd. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.